Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Tai'Shar Manethrin. I am Will.
I'm Sam.
And we're here going through, once again, The Lord of Chaos, Book 6 of the Wheel of Time. So, why don't you kick us off, Sam?
Absolutely. Chapter 35, In the Hall of the Sitters. Egwene knows this is a joke. Surely she's being punked. Says, I'm not even Aes Sedai. But they've thought of this, and their explanation is lawyer speak at its finest. Beonin says the letter of the law states the Amyrlin seat is Aes Sedai, but nowhere does it say that it is necessary to be Aes Sedai to become Amyrlin. Sure doesn't match the spirit of the law, but Carlinia says it was too obvious to be needed, but a law means what it says, whatever they meant to say.
It is. That is, clever way around it. It's technically the truth.
Exactly. Yep. So Shiriam says Egwene can take the 3 oaths as soon as they're back in the tower. They considered having her speak them without the rod, but could be taken as a sham, so better to wait. Egwene is still a little slow on the uptake, but who wouldn't be in this situation? I mean, my goodness. She walked in expecting to get kicked out, but instead they're putting her in charge, kind of, except not really, of course. They want a malleable puppet. Should have thought this through a little longer, though. Our girl just went through the Aiel Wise One boot camp. I mean, my goodness. If she can get strapped by the Wise Ones for hours and hours, she can handle a bunch of sitters.
You know, I will say in my first reading, I thought I was a little incredulous in this moment. Like later on, it becomes more clear as to why, but at this moment I was a little bit like, really? Would they do this? Would they make Egwene? Right. Now I get it. Now I feel like, okay, yeah, they're hoping to get somebody malleable that they can lead by the nose, but they're thinking, oh, this young girl that just a few years ago discovered her powers, or a year ago or whatever it is. I get that a little bit better, but yeah, my first reading I was like, this doesn't seem all that realistic based off of what I know of the Aes Sedai, and there's something I will talk about maybe in the spoiler section. Sure. Yeah. That's revealed later that makes this all more likely, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah. To hear that for sure. Mm-hmm. You know, first, so Egwene says, this isn't happening. I'm just going to say no. Anaya says, you really can't. You can't refuse summons to become Amyrlin any more than you can refuse summons to a trial. The words for the two are even the same. It was great. Thanks for that encouragement, Anaya. We appreciate it. So the serving woman brings in 8 accepted dresses for Egwene to try on before she finds one that is a little tight in the bosom but loose in the hips. Gotta love the details Jordan throws in there.
Right.
The Solidar 6 spend the rest of the time lecturing her on what she's supposed to say in front of the hall and making her repeat everything back word for word. Then it's off to the little tower in the middle of the night. So this is going down right now, not waiting until morning. They just summoned everybody and hey, she's here. Let's do this. Shiriam, Myrell, and Morvarin lead her to a room with high ceilings lit by lamps. Sitters from the 6 Ajas in Salidar, sitting, of course, excluding the Reds, are sitting in a row of chairs, all wearing their shawls and looking very formal. Romanda calls, who comes before the hall of the tower? And Egwene says, one who comes obediently in the light. Romanda repeats her question. Egwene repeats her answer with humbly instead of obediently. Third time she says, one who comes at the summons of the hall, humbly, obedient and humble in the light, asking only to accept the will of the hall. The youngest sitter, Kwamisa, asks the ritual question dating back to the break in the world.
Here it comes. This is one of those, this is this chapter.
Jordan, man, you just haven't done this in a while, have you? Just couldn't resist.
Yeah.
She says, are there any present save women? And so instead of just saying, no, we're all women, one by one, they take their tops off to prove that they are, in fact, women.
This is so absurd to me. The ritual nudity is a thing. I get that in some cultures. So there are places where I'm find it more believable than here.
Not in this case, right?
Yeah, I don't. This just. It's bizarre to me.
Especially the next moment, Kwamisa walks around the room inspecting each person, and Jordan uses the phrase, an almost insultingly direct stare.
I could expand on why I think this is ridiculous, but I feel like it would strain the safe for work nature of our podcast, and I'm just like, I think it's ridiculous.
It's absurd. Yeah. It was entirely unnecessary for this chap. I'm sure Jordan had a good reason for deciding he wanted to do this that wasn't just perverted, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. It's hard to defend it, that's for sure. Ramonda, and so I wrote that everyone puts their shirts back on, but I'm not sure that happens. There's a few times where it seems like they didn't. I don't know.
Some of them do, some of them don't. I think if I remember correctly, it's like there's like one or two that don't. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just
right. So Ramonda asks who stands for Romanda. I think Amanda. It's like kind of Amanda with a row. I don't know. Asks for who stands for Egwene. Shiriam says, "I do." Romanda asks for more ritual questions. Egwene responds with the answer she was given. Says, "I'm here to become Amerlin," even though she doesn't really want to. They're like, "You have to say it. This is how it has to happen. Doesn't matter what you want." So then 9 of the 18 sitters stand, showing their acceptance. And acceptance has to be unanimous. So now it's time for Egwene to wash some feet. To convince them to accept her, I guess. It's confusing. As she does, she says to each one, "Please allow me to serve."
Yes.
And this time, all of them but Lelaine and Ramanda stand up. Finally, Lelaine shrugs and stands up, and Ramanda slowly does the same. And that's it. Egwene is Amerlin now. Woohoo! Put the stole over her head, and she sits on the hard wooden chair at the end of the row, which hurts like heck because she's been strapped all night by wise ones.
Right.
What are you going to do? So everyone says, "Please allow me to serve, mother," and kisses her ring, to which she says, "You may serve, daughter." Then they all file out except for the 3 that brought her in. Egwene asks what would have happened if Ramanda hadn't stood, and Shiriam says she or Lelaine would have been raised Amerlin in a couple of days. Egwene would have gone back to being accepted, but wouldn't have had a very nice time because, she was almost Amerlin, and everyone would know that.
Right.
Bionin says most times this happened in the past. The woman who would have been raised is exiled. Shiriam says she, Morvran, and Myrell certainly would have been exiled as they stood for Egwene. Probably the rest of the Salidar Six. Normally, a new Amerlin spends her first night in contemplation, but this time they're going to brief her on what's going on in Salidar instead. Egwene says, "Yes, please." Chapter 36, The Amerlin is Raised. Egwene wakes up in a canopied bed with a maid named Chesa waiting for her to wake up. It's her maid. She's got a maid now as Amerlin. Quite a change from the Aiel tents. Not necessarily a change for the better. She notices there's lace all over everything, a very lacy room. Shiriam and the others have brought Egwene up to speed and made it clear what her role should be. They expect her to do what she's told. She asks about Logain, and Shiriam says nothing to worry you about, and says the tower will argue about whether or not to gentle him, and again until he dies of old age. So after they leave, Ramanda shows up, and then Lelaine. Each wants to get their claws into the new Amerlin so they can be the true authority behind the chair. Chesa says, you need to get ready. She's immediately assumed the role of respect and familiarity like an old retainer. She says, "The Amerlin seat can't be lying slug-a-bed. Not today of all days, slug-a-bed." I like it. Gonna use it. That's a good one.
Slug-a-bed.
Yeah.
I played bass for Slug-a-bed back in the early 2000s.
Right. While Egwene changes, she notices Chesa actively avoiding looking at all of her bruises and tells her she fell off a horse, had an accident, whatever you want. This satisfies Chesa, who does not have a high opinion of horses whatsoever. Or why are we hearing this conversation? I mean, I guess it's to help us get used to the idea of Egwene as Amerlin, but
yeah,
I don't care that Chesa thinks carts are safer than horses. Don't care. Just don't. It's not on my priority list. Egwene says people are people, low or high, which Chesa likes and makes her beam for a minute. Kind of glad they're on the same wavelength. So anyway, Egwene gets dressed and eats while Chesa murmurs about not eating too fast or you'll upset your tummy. Then Egwene goes downstairs. Shiriam says, "You'll do fine. Just remember your lines." Egwene has a speech to deliver as the new Amerlin. So everybody's very formal. They line up and go outside. And it's kind of like choosing a new pope, minus the smoke signals and funny hats.
Right.
Ramonda announces, "We have an Amerlin seat." And Egwene steps out on a platform of air and gives her speech. But instead of giving the full speech that the sitters wrote for her, she kind of paraphrases and adds some of her own stuff. Kind of an early sign of what's to come, I would say.
Right.
So she says, we're going to take out Elida. Shiriam is my keeper, basically. Elaine and Ramonda weren't happy about that. Both, of course, wanted to be keeper. She goes on to say, this day all accepted and novices are absolved of penances and punishments. Yay, no more scrubbing pots for Nynaeve and Elaine. Goes on to decree that Theodrin, Phaelane, Nynaeve, and Elaine are raised to the Shaw as full sisters. And let there be feasting, and nobody work today. Make the lights shine, yada, yada, yada. And the people start dancing in the street, because that's what you do when there's a new Amerlin seat. Shiriam ushers Egwene past stone-faced sitters. Started to say warders, but I meant sitters. When they get to her study, she says, why did you change the speech? Egwene's like, come on, I cover the important bits. It was really long and formal sounding and awful. Shiriam asks, why did you raise the Supergirls and Theo and Phaelane? Egwene gets all doe-eyed, wide-eyed innocence and says, seemed necessary. With 4 others being raised, it doesn't seem so odd that Egwene herself accepted to become the Amerlin seat, and no matter what Elida tries to say, Egwene's going to do this a lot more, isn't she, for a while, feigning innocence and just trying to be less than she is when she's talking to Shiriam and Elaine and Ramonda, and we're going to see a lot of that. It's going to happen for a while.
And she succeeds at it. I mean, it's part of actually, I think, what allows her to get a lot done, especially in these early parts, is that they do kind of at first believe that they have a puppet. Her letting them think that, I think, really does, it maintains.
I agree. Yep. Elaine and Ramonda sort of reluctantly agree with her, but says, you better talk to us before pulling a stunt like that again, young lady. And Egwene's all apologies and says, of course I will. I just thought it was the right thing to do, but I will consult in the future. Please leave. Shiriam sounds surprised and says, you handled that well, but don't forget that the Hall can make things difficult if you tee them off. Egwene promises to listen carefully from now on. Yep, going to listen real carefully. She says, can I please see Elaine and Nynaeve? And there's a funny moment after Shiriam leaves when Egwene is just sitting at an empty desk because she doesn't have anything to do, doesn't have anything to read. She can't leave. Nynaeve and Elaine come in and curtsies along with Mother. And Egwene is just like all but wails, please don't do that. If her friends are going to do that, she's going to go crazy. Elaine gives her a big hug, but Nynaeve says, we have to. You're the Amerlin seat, and anything else would be improper. So Egwene says, okay, only in public, please, just don't do that in private. So they finally catch up on what they've been doing. Well, mostly. All but the bits about Birgitta and Moghedien at first. Talk about the Aiel, about Rand, about men, though they don't really get into depth about men. Egwene says Rand intends to give Elaine the Sun Throne and the Lion Throne. Elaine's like, oh, really? He's going to give that to me. When I see him, I'll put my hands on him and teach him the right way to say it. Sure, that's what you'll do. You'll put your hands on him. So this leads Elaine and Nynaeve to telling Egwene about the bold Bolo winds in Abu Dar. Oh, and how they need to find it, but the tower won't let them. Egwene says she can't do whatever she wants, or she might be deposed, but we're going to try to play Shiriam, Elaine, and Ramonda off against each other, like you said, kind of. Right. And she says she raised them because she needs their help, and because they're her friends also, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to hear all about their discoveries and may have one of her own. Elaine sounds kind of distracted and says, that will be wonderful. And weirdly, but we know she's worried about whether or not they should tell Egwene about Moghedien.
Mm.
Chapter 37, when battle begins. Cue awkward silence as Elaine and Nynaeve eye the bracelet Nynaeve is wearing. They look at each other and Nynaeve whispers, I have a confession. Puts the Adam bracelet on the floor, tells Egwene that Moghedien is her prisoner, and no one knows but Swan and Lyanna. Man, what a bomb to drop with the new Amerlin.
Right.
Elaine says, we had to do it. The Hall would have executed her, and she had knowledge we can use. That's how we've been making these discoveries, most of them. Egwene says, all right, fine. Bring her to me, and Nynaeve runs off to do so. Egwene looks at Elaine, and it's just kind of this awkward pause. And Egwene says, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you about anybody else, even though that's a big secret to keep. And Elaine jumps up and says, well, maybe I can tomorrow, just not right now. Talking about Bugetta, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Gawain says she has plans, and it's kind of an interesting little point. She says the wise ones channel differently. I want to change the way we do things, but also I want to bring in anyone who can learn to channel and make them novices, no matter how old they are. Stop excluding people just because they can't channel too. I mean, look at Soralea. She would have been put out of the tower immediately because she could barely channel, but she's a powerful leader. And the wise ones.
So she's wanting to start an IEL study abroad program kind of thing.
Exactly.
Exchange students.
Exactly. So Elaine asks if she means the Windfinders too, and winces. She thinks she betrayed their secret, of course. She says if IEL gets special protection, then the sea folk should too. Let the Windfinders teach their girls, and those sea folk women bundled off to the tower. So they spit in their hands and shake to seal the agreement. Good job. Social distancing was not a thing. No coronavirus in the Wheel of Time.
Right. And I guess Aes Sedai healing probably made infectious diseases a non-issue.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Merrigan walks in, followed by Nynaeve. Nynaeve uses the Idom to make Moghedien channel, and the weave of disguising her melts away so that Egwene can see what she really looks like. Egwene is not impressed. She said, put her back. Egwene says, I've been living with the Aiel, so put one foot wrong and I'll kill you. I don't have any problems going back to prison, so lie to me and I'll kill you. Look at me wrong and I'll kill you. I may just kill you. So Egwene tests her by asking about traveling, kind of describes how Rand does it by boring a hole in the pattern. Moghedien says, if you do it that way, he'll be sucked away and die. Egwene says, okay, well then how do I do it? Moghedien says, you make 2 places in the pattern identical, and she can show you. And so Egwene says like this, and weaves flows of spirit and creates a gateway to the Aiel Waste. So Moghedien says, who taught you that? And Egwene says, never be too sure I don't know the answer when I ask you a question. So she's playing mind games with her here a little bit. Kind of great. Mm-hmm. Swan knocks on the door, and Egwene releases Saidar. And so there's a back and forth. And Swan says, the sitters made a bad mistake. The plump little grunter for the table turns out to be a live silver pike as long as your leg. Plump little grunter. That's great. Oh, man. Egwene says, all right, don't you try to control me. I have enough people doing that. Swan says, listen, it's hard for me to change my ways at this point, but I never really liked you because I saw too much of myself in you. Egwene says, all right, call me Egwene in private and just help me figure out how to get the Howl moving the way I want them instead of just sitting here in Solidar doing nothing. And Swan sort of agrees to help her. And we switch to Romanda and Lelaine for mirror scenes. Each has sitters who would have supported her for Amerlin, and both wondering where Delana is. Both resolve to show Shiriam she hasn't got as much power as she thinks. So perfect for Egwene to play them off against each other. Switch to Delana, who is with Arengar. Arengar tells her to push to have Logain gentled, because of course, we know why. Because he can, of course, Logain could see Arengar channeling.
Right.
Which Delana does not know. Swan goes to see Lelaine. So we have a couple of scenes here where various people go to see Lelaine, Romanda, and Shiriam and play them off against each other. And there's plenty of that. Then Egwene is in a bath prepared by Chesa, and she remembers a time Ruark told her that once a battle begins, the battle leader no longer has any control over events, and that's how she kind of feels about this when she's trying to move the hall the way she wants, but she can't really do anything directly. She has to kind of trust Swan and Egwene, or Swan and Elaine and Nynaeve to help her out. All she can do is wait. Even so, I think the wise ones would be proud, she says to herself. Chapter 38, A Sudden Chill. Matt rides Pips through an Altaran forest with a band. Avienda walks beside him, and Oliver is constantly glaring at her, as he often does. And he makes Avienda uneasy for some reason that Matt can't quite grasp. Been riding for 3 days, haven't seen anybody. Vander rides up short 2 scouts. He says a warder captured them. He says he got into Solidar on foot, and there are 200 or 300 Aes Sedai there, which is a lot more than what Rand thought. And they have an army, maybe twice as large as the band. So Matt reminds Tomanis and Legion they aren't here to fight, just here to get Elaine. He says, sit tight. Avi interrupts and says, are they that way? And just sort of walks off in the direction of Solidar. So Matt throws up his hands and is like, all right, fine. So he takes some people with him. Tomanis is left in charge, takes some bannermen. Vannon says, don't unfurl your banners right now, but let's just catch up to Avienda. And she says, let me up on your horse. And then asks him about Oliver. And Matt says, yeah, the Shido killed his father. His mother died of sickness or something, and Oliver buried her. And what do you think? You owe him something? And she's like, no, I didn't kill him, but you're doing a crappy job as a father because men have no idea how to raise kids. Some deflection there, I think. So they ride into town and really aren't stopped by anybody. Matt sees Birgitta and thinks she looks familiar with good reason, his memories.
Right.
Assumes she must be a hunter for the horn. Matt stops a pretty lady and says, all right, where's Egwene? I'm here to see him. And then belatedly really realizes she's an Aes Sedai. And she's like, all right, fine, come here, follow me. Vannon looks at him like he's crazy. You don't ask an Aes Sedai for directions? Nicola points at him and says he glows. And so Anaya says, oh, great, you have a hidden talent. You've rediscovered a talent to be able to see Taviran. So the Aes Sedai notice Avienda and realize how strong in the power she is. And one says she can learn much as a novice. So she gets this hunted look. And Nynaeve shows up and says, I suppose it's too much to hope you have anything to do with this army of Dragonsworn. And he's like, and Matt's like, yeah, I'm in charge of it. Avienda's starting to look frantic and keeps saying, Matt Coffin, Matt Coffin. He just kind of grins at her and says, lead me to the Emerlin. Good luck. So Nynaeve leads Matt into a room with Elaine and Egwene. And this is such a funny scene because she's of course sitting there wearing the stole of the Emerald seat. And Matt's like, what are you doing? And snatches it off and like sits in her chair and is like, what do you think? This is a joke? They're going to kill you for putting that thing on, you idiot.
I feel like Matt's reaction is my reaction to this to some degree. Like there is no way you can be the Amerlin seat.
Right.
There's no
why
way.
Are you pretending that you're going to get in trouble? I can help you.
Right.
Just let's stop doing this foolishness right now. So they all try to stop him, but they can't channel against him because, of course, he has a Foxhead medallion. And so he points a finger at Elaine and says, you are coming with me to Camelin. And you guys, Egwene and Nynaeve, you can come too if you want. Nynaeve, yank that braid once and I'll warm your bottom. So then a novice walks in, sort of breaks everything up and says, does Mother need anything? Egwene says, no, Tabia, I want to talk to General Cawthon alone a little longer. We'll want Shiriam shortly. Nynaeve tells Matt to close his mouth or he'll catch flies in tones of deepest satisfaction.
Indeed.
Chapter 39, Possibility. So Egwene asks Matt, okay, please get out of my chair. Dude is shell-shocked that Egwene is actually the Emerlin seat and not just pretending, I guess. I don't know what he exactly thought. Who would do that? But it does explain why he was so outraged. Like you said, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Egwene starts to speak, and Matt interrupts again, and he's calmer at least. He says, you're all crazy, and you're going to lose your heads over this, but maybe we can still fix it. You can pretend to inspect the band, you can make a gateway, and we'll all be laughing about this before anyone suspects a thing. And Nynaeve cuts him off by, quote, hiking up her skirts and kicking Matt squarely in his. Oh, Jordan. Matt staggers, catches himself, and begins to stalk slowly toward Nynaeve with a noticeable limp. So everyone's struggling not to laugh. And as he gets closer, Nynaeve starts to look a little worried, so Nynaeve breaks in. Matt, stop cutting the fool. You're in quite a predicament, but I should be able to help you get out of it if you listen to reason. So he spins around and says, who, me? You jumped into a bear pit and think everything is fine because you haven't landed yet.
I immediately regret this decision. These bears are much larger in person.
Egwene says Dragonsworn aren't regarded very highly in Salidar, and Matt's like, we're Dragonsworn. But they are really.
Right, yeah. It's one of those, we are, but
we're not
like
Dragonsworn.
Not like Dragonsworn, just Dragonsworn.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I hear it now.
Yeah, exactly. So he's a little taken aback, and he adopts a little bit of a more reasonable tone with indulgence in the most defensive way possible, as Jordan puts it. Rand would welcome you in Camelin with or without Aes Sedai. He can help you with Elida, can make that tower whole, part the waters, and fly, and whatever. Egwene says, talk to anyone else about carrying me, Elaine, or Nynaeve off, and you'll get a sword through you, lickety split. Matt just kind of throws up his hands and says, all right, I'll come back when you're ready to listen to reason. And kind of says, has anyone seen Tom Maryland? And Elaine says, don't try to leave town. Matt looks her up and down, nearly earning a slap, and says, I'll leave when I bloody well please. And you're coming with me if I have to tie you up in a package to hand Durand myself. So he bows mockingly to Egwene, shakes a finger at Nynaeve, and leaves. Just really making an impression here.
Matt, he really has a way with the ladies. Just shows them the respect they deserve. Really treats them like an equal.
It's interesting to me how many people's favorite character is Matt.
Right.
It's like, man, it just wouldn't have occurred to me to.
Well, I think part of it is that, we see him become more and more mature through the series. He's got his personality has a real arc to it, and I mean, let's face it, he's the cool guy, whether or not
he's got the quick quip, and he's the class clown kind of thing, and the
gambler,
sure, certainly. Elaine asks Egwene if she wants to join the band to Gareth Bryn's army. Egwene says no, but I do have a scheme that will involve Matt and the band. And Elaine says, brilliant, but Nynaeve is skeptical. What makes you think Matt will go along with this? He'll stick a pole through the spokes just for the fun of it, as Jordan puts it. Egwene says, well, I think he made a promise. A heck of a lot riding on your hunch there, Chica. I mean, right though it may be. And Elaine, of course, is lost. But Matt does what he wants and always has, she says. Egwene's like, yeah, but if he gives his word, he keeps it no matter what. So she pauses and looks at Elaine. I mean, if you want to go with him to Camelin now, you can. And Elaine really does hesitate. And it's like, no, we need to go to Ibu Dar and find the bowl. As much as I'd like to, go show men who's boss or whatever. And also, she really wants to study Matt's mystery Tirangriel that makes Weaves of the Power melt away from him. Nynaeve's like, why don't we just have some warders rough him up? Egwene's like, well, if we want him to get him to do anything, we can't do that. We can't take things from him.
Right.
Elaine says, well, maybe if we take him to Ibu Dar with us, I'll have a chance. Which Nynaeve does not care for this suggestion at all.
By the way, I would actually very much like to see a scene where Matt versus several warders. Like, how would that turn out? Matt's luck and everything
for sure.
Versus however many warders would be kind of interesting.
Absolutely, especially if it's a quarterstaff. If he has a quarterstaff or a Shandarai.
All right.
So Shiriam comes in, breaks up the conversation. Egwene tells Nynaeve, maybe avoid Matt until his temper cools off after you kicked him. Continues. That whole back and forth continues for way too long.
Yeah.
Shiriam has a chance. Before she has a chance to speak, Egwene says, Matt's the commander of the Dragonsworn, and apparently Rand would like us all to come to Camelin and take an oath of fealty. So this really throws Shiriam off, and she shows maybe a hint of fear. Kind of a fun line there. Egwene says, well, of course I told him that was ridiculous, and Shiriam kind of breathes a sigh of relief and is, completely off guard at this point. And Egwene continues with the playing off against Ramonda and Lelaine, and Shiriam says, well, maybe we should take Gareth Bryn's army to Ibu Dar to avoid any accidental confrontations with the band. And Shiriam's like, no, we can't do that. Ibu Dar is not so welcoming as that. Thailands will think we were trying to seize the city. So, but maybe we need to send this army of Dragonsworn away. Egwene says, I don't think it'll work. He has orders to wait until something happens. Rand might even show up with some of the men he's teaching to channel. So Shiriam's like, well, maybe we should leave after all. Egwene's like, well, the only direction left is north, and it'll look like we're moving toward Tarvalin. And Shiriam snaps, I know that. Do you think I don't know that? She said, I'm sorry. I don't like to be forced into things, and Rand has forced our hand before we're ready. Egwene says, I will speak quite severely to him when I next see him. What would I ever do without your advice, Shiriam? So she smiles, thinking about Shiriam, how great it would be if Shiriam could be sent to study with the wise ones and how half a year with Sora Leah would change her tune. And Shiriam sees her smile and smiles back, and Egwene lifts her teapot and says, honey or bitter? So chapter 40, Unexpected Laughter. So Matt finally tracks down Tom Maryland, and gives him the letter. He says, "Listen, you gotta talk some sense into the Wonder Girls." Tom tells Matt about a time that he tried to rescue a woman from an abusive husband and got kicked in the knee and run out of town for trouble. And Matt's like, "What does that have to do with anything? They all seem to like kicking." Tom says, "Did you know they're going to Ibudar in a few days? Julian and I are going with them." Matt's like, "You got to help me. You got to help me get her out of here." And Tom's like, "Did you hear anything I said? No, I'm not going to help you try to undo what they're doing. Have you thought about trying to help them, maybe? I mean, consider Egwene. She has the backbone to be Emerald and maybe the brains. But is she tough enough to stand up to Elida? If not, they're going to eat her alive. I mean, not even Elida. The Aes Sedai here will eat her alive. You're not going to convince them to do anything they don't want to do, but maybe you can help keep them alive." So Matt just thinks Tom is a crazy old man and jumps up and asks him who the letter's from, another woman you rescued or one you left to get her head cut off. Tom says quietly, "I left her," and then walks away without another word because, of course, we know that letter is from Moraine, and that cuts to the quick. So Matt catches sight of Nynaeve, who all but runs away from him, and he scowls and goes to find Vanna and says, "Go find the band, tell Talmanis to sit tight, don't try to rescue me or anything dumb like that." One of the squadmen asks Matt if everything is going according to plan, and Matt's like, "Yes, absolutely, everything's bloody fine." So Elaine goes to find Avienda. So how's this conversation going to go? We know no one could say up front. An Aes Sedai named Akaran tells her that Avienda will be in white by nightfall, and Akaran sounds like a bird Pokemon. I don't know. Birgitte tells Elaine that Adelius and Vandine will be going with them to Ibudar. And Arena, the chick who has been following Birgitte around, is mad because she can't go and says, "You at least help me with my archery before you go." So Elaine does find Avienda having tea with 5 sisters in a sitting room. Elaine tells them she must take Avienda away from them for a time, and some seem ready to protest, although Elaine is clearly the strongest in the room and should have precedence. They do leave, and Avienda asks to go to Elaine's room. So first off, Elaine says, "Matt thinks you're here to kill me," and Avienda's like, okay. Avienda responds by taking her shirt off and putting a stick and a knife at the foot of the bed and raising her neck. And she says, "I have tow and I ask you to help me meet it. Also, I slept with Rand." Elaine says, "I don't care that you love him. I love him. Get up and put on your blouse." Hold on, you did what? "I'm not going to beat you, or maybe just a little beat." No. So Avienda is confused, and she's like, "Are you proposing we share him, or we're friends, but we got to be first sisters to be sister wives, and it will take time to know if we can be that." Elaine sort of faintly says, "Yep, you're right. Yep, a little complicated." And there is a third lady who loves him too. So Avienda jumps up with a knife and says, "Who is she?" Avienda and Elaine's like, "Sit down. Let's chat about it. It's, nothing's ever simple." And Avienda says, "Nothing is simple when men are involved," and they laugh. Exactly. Chapter 41, A Threat. Min made it to Camelin with a retinue from Salidar, and she's nervous about seeing Rand. She's wishing she worn a dress in silk, with the bodice cut low, even though she is wearing silk just in trousers. But no, she wants him to accept her for who she is, boys' pants or coat or not. So she rides up to the palace gates, addresses the Aiel guard, and says, "Hey, here to see Rand. I'm Min. He knows me. Got a message for him." So then she's like, "Should I take my horse in? I don't think Rand wants to see her," which earns a laugh from the Aiel. So maybe Aiel humor isn't so weird, because I'd laugh at that. I mean, Rand does not want to see Wild Rose the horse. That's fair. He has nothing to say to your horse. One of the maidens, so she gets to the throne room, sees Rand, tries to follow Anila in. So one of the maidens stretches a spear out in front of her. But then Rand sees her and smiles and says, "Let her in." Min thinks he looks tired and beautiful. And then she thinks, "Please don't let my knees give way." Rand bounds over to her and picks her up, spinning her around in circles. Woolhead, and he's glad to hear it. He dismisses everyone and asks Min to come back to his apartments. She hands him the letter from Elaine. It says nothing at all, really. "I hope you feel what I feel." Oh, actually, it does say something. It says, "I love Min as a sister, and I hope you love her as I do." Nice one, Elaine. Nice one. It's good.
Yes.
I want you to love her as a sister. So Rand confesses his conflicted feelings about Elaine to Min, thinking she's just a friend and won't mind hearing it. And she gets real huffy about it. She says, "Oh, do I look like a boy? Like your friend, the boy?" And then he notices that indeed she does not. And she says, "Do you love both Avienda and Elaine?" And Rand shakes his head and says, "Yeah, does that make me a lecker or a greedy fool?" Well, yeah, I guess it kind of does. He says, "I've got to stay away from all of them." And Min says, "That's not your choice to make." Rand says, "I'm a target, and being near them puts them in danger." Min says, "I'm sure I'm your friend, but I'm going to convince you I am not a man or a horse. I want tears in your eyes and drool on your chin and a stammer in your voice," which just makes him laugh. He's like, "All right." She's like, "All right, change the subject." There's an embassy of Aes Sedai in town from Salvador, and Min says there are 9 of them, which kind of gets loose there and murmuring.
Nine.
But none of them mean you any harm based on my viewings. But I did have a viewing when you were in the throne room that Aes Sedai will hurt you, maybe more than once. Well, women who can channel will hurt you, maybe Aes Sedai, maybe not. Saran says, "All right, take a message, tell them they can come 3 at a time, but none are to enter the inner city without my permission." And Min says, "Oh, they'll love that." So then a crash whips Rand's head around, and he sees Sulin in a servant's dress. She's dropped the wine pitcher, and Rand says, "Sulin, a good servant does not toss trays about. Pick it up and do as you're supposed to." So he's trying to help her meet her toe by discharging some of his obligation to her.
Yes.
And she just waits on him, and he is kind of treating, so she's just waiting on him now. So he's kind of treating her horribly from an Aiel's perspective to help her meet her toe faster. So then Melaine comes in, and she has a message about, she's telling Rand about Egwene leaving for Salvador. And he's like, "I already know where Salvador is." And then Melaine sort of clearly disapproves of Min being there and sitting in Rand's lap. But then Min has a viewing and says, "You're going to have twins." Melaine is shocked because she hasn't told anybody that she's pregnant and just found out herself. So this sort of is a moment of bonding between Min and Melaine. It's sort of like how Min is accepted by the Aiel in general, really. It's like Melaine just kind of like spreads that message. But so they sort of talk about what Min can do, and she calls it interpreting the dream.
Bearing in mind that Aiel refer to life as a dream. They are
good point.
Ruark, before
Waking from the dream
battle. Yeah. They say, life's but a dream.
So while they're sitting there, Min sort of goes through the 9 Aes Sedai that are there from Salidar and tells Rand about them, about the ones that are for him, maybe against him. She really thinks that the Salidar embassy is to be trusted, but she doesn't really know, for sure that these are not the Aes Sedai that are going to hurt him. And so that's really kind of the end of the chapter and
also the end of an episode for us.
Coincidentally enough.
So I got a couple of spoilers to talk about. So if you don't want to be spoiled, check in with you next week. So first off, when I was talking about earlier how Egwene not totally believing the business about her becoming Amerlin. Well, later on, and I don't know if these are ever clearly connected, but it's revealed that impersonating the Amerlin is a capital offense. And
interesting.
So once that came out, I was like, it actually makes a lot more sense then, because not only were they wanting to get a puppet, none of them want to take the chance that, hey, if this all goes sideways.
Oh, I see.
Wayne
would be the one hanging for it or whatever.
Exactly. And so stilled and killed. And so I never realized those rhyme. Oh, we got a still and kill, ladies. But yeah, so once that comes out, to me, that should have been a bigger point, of
right. I mean, I think from Shiriam's perspective, anyone that's that close to her is going to get, sort of, especially Shiriam herself, as being her keeper, would also be certainly stilled and killed.
Right.
Shake and bake, still and kill, whatever.
Right.
But anyone, but for the rest of them, for the rest of the sitters, that would certainly, maybe for Lelaine and Ramonda specifically, that could be the calculation that they could potentially escape unscathed. Whereas if they'd been Amerlin, they would be certainly, prosecuted.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good point.
When we get to Tom and the letter, we don't find out for several books what is actually in the letter. We know it's from Moraine, obviously. There comes a time later on where Matt asks about the letter, and Tom says, "Oh, well, I'm supposed to tell you now." And I could be wrong about this. When we get to it, it's kind of on the other side of the slog from here.
Yeah.
But when we get to it, I might correct myself, or maybe one of our listeners can. But I think the only condition that Moraine sets in the letter for him telling Matt is, Matt's going to ask you about this letter, and when he does, you tell him.
Well, you could have told him this time.
Yes, exactly. Matt basically asks, "What's the deal with that letter?"
Right.
And so I'm like, I feel like there's a little bit of an inconsistency there. Like maybe there should have been some other, I don't know. And again, I may be wrong about
I think
this.
Tom was just mad at him.
Yeah. At this point, he was anyway. And I don't know. Maybe he hadn't read the letter yet.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're
Maybe
supposed to take away.
Opened it and saw the name and just like, I don't want to read that.
Right. Yeah. So maybe that's my headcanon, I guess, apologizing for the possibility there. But getting to this part in the reread, I was like, wait a second, because I just remember that moment of, here, I can tell you now, because she said you were going to ask about it, and I'm supposed to tell you at that point.
Right. No, that's a good point.
Because it all has to do with, of course, how they get her back.
Right.
So, but anyway, all right. Well, that's all I had. Did you have anything else?
I did not. Nope. Had no spoilers for this one.
In that case, we're wrapping up here. Be sure to contact us at tsmpodcast.com. You can go fill out our form and say hello. If you have feedback for us or anything, you can always just let us know. Be sure to follow us on all the socials. Those are Podcast TSM on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also find us on YouTube. Go and subscribe there. We don't have a lot of followers yet,
right.
But if we get enough, then we could get our own vanity URL. I don't know. It's just another way to get it out there, share it around, whatever. And wherever you get your podcasts, go on, give us a rating and say hello. And guys, we love hearing from you. So however you reach out, if you can tell us maybe we screwed something up, correct us, give us feedback. We always love hearing from folks. So thanks for listening. And until next time, Tai'Shar Manethrin.